Who's music in the background?
Yeah, who's got the music?
Hey, we're live, guys. It's Dr. Politics and the Political Architect Show. I'm Ryan Nidek. I'm here with Dwight Patel, Jack Saxtein, Mark Unkerfer, Don Irvine, and Marcus Elzona.
Happy Friday, everybody!
Happy Friday. It's been a long week. Seems like I am dead tired.
All right, let's go kick it off by since we're heading into a weekend, we're actually heading into a rather potentially cold week. We have a freeze warning tonight. For heaven's sakes, it's May. Dwight, what happened? Where's the global warming when we need it?
I know. Greta Thunberg's birthday wish is coming true. You know, she wanted everyone to be out of work and freezing. How dare we? She should be playing, not talking to Congress on the coming down.
But it's almost like the planet heats and cools in its own way, with no concern for what we humans are doing to it.
Yeah, just imagine that we actually have different weather at different times in different places. You know, this is gee whiz.
By the way, some of you people know, I do predictions and I'm pretty accurate, and just want to say, I called the thunderstorms we had the other night.
Dwight won't be leaving his current job to be a meteorologist.
No, I called that. I also called,
So, Dwight, are you the sources of Al Gore's predictions when he goes out and predicts the weather?
No, see, I'm actually more accurate. Like, I called for a blizzard in the Northeast this winter. We had one. I called for some really bad movies last year. There were some really bad movies, and I said Avengers Endgame was going to be the biggest movie of the year, and it was. I mean, I'm really good at this. I called. I made a lot of.
Hey, Dwight, do you have some kind of your own version of the Farmer's Almanac or something? You know?
There's like a crystal ball somewhere.
No.
What lotto number should I pick this year?
17, 35, 36.
Okay.
Just on this climate change and all these other issues, let me just throw one thing out at you too, because while we're all into this, still in the global pandemic and all these other things, one of the things I thought has been interesting has just been what the green movement. They're kind of, to me, they seem to be kind of stuck now a little bit. We've taken all this traffic off the roads and all the clean air and all this kind of stuff, but they're still trying to fight for all this green energy and all these other things. But, I'm not sure that the world is going to be quite the same. I'm not sure we're going to see the same level of pollution and things like that. Or on the flip side, or will we, because are people going to abandon mass transit and go to their cars and create more pollution in some of these cities?
Who's going to want to ride the subway when...
I don't want to ride the subway now.
Yeah, in the era of social distancing. I saw a headline earlier that they shut the subway down early to sanitize for the first time in 150 years. Just think about that.
But a big thing, a lot of the pollution we see comes from air travel. And just because the flights are going to have less people on them doesn't mean they're not going to fly the same number of
No. Let's not go after the airplanes.
I'm not saying it's bad. Air travel is still the safest form of travel and the most convenient way to get long distances in shorter periods of time. But I think that if we're talking about where the main sources of pollution come from, it comes from freight, planes and boats.
No, they say CO2 is a big culprit. I say it comes from Capitol Hill when Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer opened their mouths.
Okay.
I thought you were going to say cow cars.
All right, okay.
When Dwight makes those statements, we know it's time to move on.
What else do we have?
So, kind of going into this whole thing. So, how do you guys feel about what's going on here in Maryland right now from this whole pandemic? So, Governor Hogan has he's opened up the beaches and the boardwalk in Ocean City, one of Dwight's favorite places.
Yes,
he said many times that he would like to have the Maryland Republican Convention there all the time, pretty much. So, right?
I think we should be there in the fall. It's a 12-month, it's a 9-month season down there now, thanks to global warming.
I mean, it's a start. We're starting to see that open up. He made the announcement this week to open up more outdoor recreational activities, camping, which my roommate is trying to get me to do, and I refuse to do. This girl doesn't camp. Fishing. I think it's really important for people as we move into the late spring, early summer to be able to get out there and enjoy some fresh air. I think one of the positive things that can come out of this is at least for people's ability to be in nature more. At the end of this, no one's going to want to be confined to their house any longer than they have to. So, get off your screen a little bit.
Well,
But
here's something,
it's worth, though, keeping in mind that Maryland continues to be having an increasing proportion of COVID cases relative to the rest of the country.
Yeah, we're roughly 5% per week rising.
And no, actually, about the number of cases is about 4% per day. I go back over the last week. We haven't had a day. The lowest day we had was 3%. So a week ago, which was May 1st, right? We had 23,400 cases. We're now up to 400 cases in Maryland.
Mark or Jackie, do you?
60% of them are in elderly communities, right?
And all that. And the good news is, I mean, so that's the leading sort of lagging indicator. The number of hospitalizations over the last week have essentially flattened out with, I forget what the number is, but it is relatively stable. My point was just comparing the number of cases we have with Maryland with the rest of the country. The rest of the country is actually dropping. It's increasing at about half the rate of Maryland.
Now,
Brian, what did you have?
I was going to ask, do you know if that statistic is standardized at all for the number of tests being administered in different states? Because I know some states are testing at a much heavier rate than Maryland, and we just acquired 500,000 tests from South Korea, obviously, which is a large number.
But I don't think those have actually been used yet, right?
Yes, well, that's just an example of the increase in testing.
Right. Yeah, I'm not sure if they've
No.
been standardized.
No, I mean, it could be the opposite. I mean, that the reason you're seeing a lot of the increase is because we're actually testing more. I mean,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure. I agree with Ryan's sort of like open question there. It's just I'm wondering if it can go in the other way, and that the reason why we're seeing a lot more, it's probably multifactored. It's probably perhaps we're doing more testing, and there's also an additional factor that we should.
Yeah, well,
consider.
but that's why we look at both the hospitalization and, I mean, Maryland is tracking, obviously, the number of faults or negative results. I guess it's not false results, negative results. And so what I guess you would expect is as we test more or have more tests available, that the number of faults or I keep doing that. Negative results should be increasing, and that percentage should be increasing. And it's worth looking at that number in the future.
Sure, but then there's the retesting as well is going to skew that number a little bit. If someone had it tested positive, but they're being tested again, either whether it's to go back to work on the front lines or for whatever reason, that could skew that number because they were tested more than once.
But even to the issue of Maryland's testing, it is heavily skewed in a few counties. I mean, Prince George's County and Montgomery County in particular have a very high number of cases relative to, frankly, the more rural counties of the state.
So what's Governor Hogan and his team, what are they going to be looking at? Are they going to be looking at all those things you mentioned? They'll be looking at the cases, hospitalizations, all those things. I mean, what's their decision factor?
Jackie, I think, put her finger on one of the key points. Is we've I guess more and more are learning just how much these cases are. The more serious cases, the ones that result in hospitalization, are concentrated in nursing homes. And I guess as we calibrate our responses, we really need to be more sensitive, or increasingly more sensitive, to just how concentrated the most severe cases are.
But the national indication is supposed to be, I believe, a 14-day downturn of cases. But I think that at some point, I mean, Governor Hogan is going to have to also start considering the consistent uptick in people filing for unemployment in the state of Maryland, because it can only go on for so long.
Well, I think. Sorry to interrupt.
Are done with it, and I think we're very quickly getting to that point.
Yeah, I think that it's important to note, though, at least in Maryland, the governor has said, and he repeated during his news conference this week when he said we've had a week of positive trends, that Maryland is mainly looking at hospitalizations, both overall bed usage and ICU usage, over the number of cases as the indicator they're using when looking at a 14-day trend. And that's mainly because of kind of what Marcus was discussing with, you don't know if it's testing.
And that is basically flat. I mean, it's not that it's going down. Maybe more than like 1 or 2%.
But I think we can start phase one in Maryland. I think we can slowly do it by region. I'm not alone in this. I think open up Western Maryland, open up Ocean City. I mean, for the love of God, those people depend on tourism over there in
Well,
Ocean City.
Dwight, I think that from a more practical standpoint, also, and maybe this is even an argument for Montgomery County, is that if you're going to do it by region, and Virginia says that they're moving into phase 1 on May 15th, you've now you're making it worse almost by not opening up Maryland, because there's going to be some number of people, and I don't know how large it is, that are going to go to Virginia for services that are Maryland residents, which is going to just cause more introduction of, I guess, outside people into populations.
Trump Thursdays over in McLean.
Yeah, I have
Oh.
you all know who's a very prominent figure in Young Republicans who's ready to drive his ass to Virginia to go back to the gym, of all the places.
I can't imagine who that is.
I can't imagine who that is at all.
I just want to get my hair cut, man.
Well, it's interesting in Virginia, though, the regional divides that obviously exist there are very much in display, which is that the Northern Virginia officials are strongly pushing back at Governor Northam, who is moving towards opening up, and so there's some kind of push and pull going on within that state, which is not surprising. I mean, as I, not to belabor the point, is there's some really pronounced regional variations about which areas are being the most hard hit.
I mean, I feel like ultimately, as with most things, you're never going to find a solution that makes everyone happy, but at the end of the day, just because things open back up does not mean you have to go out to restaurants if you're not comfortable.
Exactly.
So give people the choice.
And that, I guess, is the and that's a really important point. It's not this binary open close. You really, as you can calibrate it, if we know that nursing homes are particularly affected, you can take extra precautions there. But that said, you can, other environments where people are open, you can, or whether congregate, you don't need to be quite as rigorous.
Right, and honestly, it's up to the consumer. Whereas when everyone is told no, you cannot go to these places, no one has the option to go out. But if they're open, at least you can say, I feel comfortable wearing a mask and going to a restaurant and sitting 6 feet apart from someone, or no, I don't feel comfortable going to a restaurant yet. But at least then you have the option to make that decision for yourself, and businesses have that option to reopen.
Yeah, and I think that also people are starting to get, maybe it's not even pent up demand, but just like I can tell society is getting angsty. Today in the Chick-fil-A parking lot when attempting curbside pickup, there was multiple people in minivans who decided that if there's no parking spot, that their blinkers and blocking traffic is an acceptable parking spot, and lots of aggressive driving going on. So society is at a brink, and we have to decide, there's only so long that people will tolerate being told that they don't have the choice. And once you give people the choice, I think tensions will really go down. And even just looking in Facebook comment sections, which I don't recommend doing, by the way, it's a total cesspool. But tensions are at an all-time high among the population, which is my serious point with all of this. I think that you have to acknowledge that when making a decision.
And the longer people are trapped inside, the more likely they are to rush out and flood places when they can eventually go.
Yes.
I'm still planning my big post-COVID party. I'm already starting.
With 10 people socially distanced throughout the Mama Lucia's back room.
Yes.
I don't think there's enough room in there for that.
But you're right, Jackie. I mean, this is one of the things that has bothered me, I think, from all of this, is just on this reopening debate, is just that we have people think that reopening means is that everybody has to go out and do something. We all have a choice. The people will have to make their decision based on their whatever, if it's a fear factor, their health condition, whatever it is, their level of comfort with going out and participating in whatever event, whether or not that's eating in a restaurant, getting on a plane, going shopping or whatever. You make that decision. We all have that responsibility. We have that right to be able to do that. But for some reason, we've got, maybe it's the media, surprise, surprise, that has given this kind of mentality of reopening America means that we all have to go out and rush out and do something right away. And that is not the case.
Yeah, I think it's definitely the media, Don, and I think a lot of it is that the narrative has really shifted. When this all started, I'm sure everyone here and everyone watching has seen the New York Times article that popularized the phrase "flatten the curve," where there was the bell curve, the multiple different bell curves, and then the line of hospital capacity, in trying to keep the peak of that curve under capacity. A concept that has since been forgotten, apparently, by members of the media is that the area under a bell curve is always 1, meaning the number of the cases is always going to be the same if you flatten the curve, unless there's some other variables change, such as a vaccine, which is really the variable that would change to.
And knock on wood, we're looking at September.
Yeah,
For,
but you don't know that. That's the problem, right? Casey Aiken brought up this point when we had Direct Line a few weeks ago when he was on, is that you don't know that. So there's really 2 strategies here. There's the continue with flattening the curve and get it low enough where when there is an expected uptick when people start to go out again, it still stays below the resource capacity where you can adequately treat people. Or there's the really push it down and just wait it out. But I don't think that's a viable strategy. Anyone who says we shouldn't reintegrate society at all until there's a vaccine, which is definitely an opinion I have seen. Maybe it's a fringe opinion, but it's out there. And that's just not viable.
Sure. I was going to say, so at something like 4% increase per day, if the average, onset takes anywhere between 2 weeks to 20 days, at that point, the number of people with the disease ends up declining.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the flip side. We actually do have effective treatment. There are more, we've got effective treatment. We've developed treatments for COVID-19. If you get COVID-19, it's not a death sentence. You're not going to die.
Most people are being
effective
treated
treatment.
from home who have
Right,
COVID-19.
yes,
Because
right.
unless and if the goal we're looking at here is hospital capacity and ICU capacity, I would argue we're at that point that that we are below capacity.
Yeah, Maryland, they announced during the governor's press conference on Wednesday, has actually overshot its goal on increasing ICU capacity. I think they were going for 6,000 and they got 8,000 ICU beds or something like that. But I think at some point the narrative shifted, the primary narrative shifted from flatten the curve because this is a resource issue to they're still saying flatten the curve, but really it's just to prevent people from getting the disease at all, which I don't think people who advocate that strategy really understand what that means, which is if you want to prevent people from ever getting it, you have to keep people locked in their homes completely until, or at least at the level it is now, until there's a vaccine, which I don't think is viable.
We saw that in New York, that there was that evidence like people who are staying at home are still getting it. Well, yeah, because they're still going to the grocery store. There are still life activities that take place.
And
There's no real solution to keeping people trapped in their homes.
And let's look at the Swedes. They tried this a different way. They didn't shut down, and they're not having the massive spikes either.
Yeah. I mean, it's certainly faster than it is in the United States, but they don't seem to have overwhelmed their hospital capacity.
Sweden's got the same population as the state of Michigan.
Yeah.
And look at the mess.
No, I'm not disputing your point, Dwight. I actually think it's very valid in that if the goal is just to prevent there from being a resource problem, as long as you can keep the curve or the peak of the curve below the number of resources available, then that's perfectly fine, if not better, because the other thing is if the peak is higher, you're getting through it faster. That's just a fact.
Well, we have another comment. We have a comment in the chat that says the rise will happen again once things open, and that's what almost I'm afraid of. Yes, it's inevitable that's going to happen. Are people going to get spooked when they see that rise? Because yes, obviously, when people start going out in public, there will be a rise in cases. That doesn't mean that they're all going to end up in the ICU. In fact, likely they won't. But we're going to see that rise a little bit. The states are starting to open up, and the last thing we want is for that to scare people so much that they shut everything back down again. And then
and again, the data should reflect the reasons why it doesn't, but reflect the number of people who presumably have the COVID-19 currently, and discount the folks who are basically who don't have it anymore. Right now, most of the numbers you look now. Maryland, to its credit, does show people who've been tested negative, and so presumably that gets dropped out. But a lot of states don't do that. So what you're doing is piling numbers on top of numbers on numbers, and you're including people who had the disease 2 months ago.
Right.
Just quickly, do you think that the states and countries, I mean, because Dwight alluded to Sweden and Germany's had pretty good successes.
Although Germany has been seeing some spikes, our friend Jeff Brown was saying they are seeing some spikes in the outer areas, but
But I
nothing.
mean, their factories are running and things are going there. But I mean, do you think all of these things, though, in whole, I mean, the way the media is portraying them, I mean, if the media had focused more, would focus more on the states that didn't completely shut down and how they were operating, and
I mean, Arizona did not shut down. You know,
Yeah.
Arizona.
But Don, that doesn't fit their narrative.
That's
that
right.
doesn't fit
Yeah.
the fear tactic.
Yeah. We'll have to see how Georgia really progresses and Florida to a lesser extent over the next few weeks, because you really need at least 2 weeks to see what effect any measure has. But Georgia's approaching 2 weeks, so if there was an uptick that resulted from this, we'll start to see it. And then Florida has started to ease things. And by the way, I would like to say, I'm not sure if this is on the agenda, but Ron DeSantis got totally villainized by the media in every single way. And Florida really did not have a bad outbreak at all anywhere, despite a massive senior population, especially in South Florida, and a massive population of people who travel back and forth from New York to Florida.
All the New York kids who came.
Whereas, and I just want to be clear, I'm not blaming Cuomo for what happened in New York, but there is a double standard in that if the governor is personally responsible for anything that would have happened in Florida, but Cuomo gets no responsibility for having the worst state in the country, I'm not saying he should have been responsible, but the media was ready for, they were almost hoping for there to be an outbreak in Florida so they could hold DeSantis to the fire.
Yeah, and the media's
Yeah.
ready to reward Cuomo with giving him the nod as the nominee for the Democratic Party in
Yeah.
January from Sleepy Joe.
Okay. I would,
Alright, well,
all right, let me move on to one of today's headline stories, though, and something we need to discuss or at least
Right.
come to grips with, which is unemployment. So we had unemployment numbers coming out today, 14.7%, the highest on record since the Great Depression. We'll have another one next month. You know, at the beginning of the month. I expect that because the way the data is collected and reported, that number will probably be higher next month before we start seeing it go down. Unemployment filings are now decreasing, so that's a good sign. But once again, you know, I'm going to bring in the media on this. Is that, you know, that's all what I generally saw. What media headlines was of all, you know, doom and gloom and all this kind of stuff from the media about this. But is it really that bad at
No.
this point in time? I mean, we did have 33 million people file for unemployment, but that's not a permanent situation, right? Yeah.
some
And
of them
also,
are
if it was really
furloughs.
that bad, stocks would have tanked today. Stocks were up over 460 points today.
Right. There's
And if this was truly bad news, we would have seen the stock market take a nosedive. It did not. I think Wall Street, I think Main Street understands this is temporary.
that's not entirely true. I mean, a lot of it was priced in, right? I mean, there was an expectation it was going to be bad.
Yeah.
So
but there's a couple of points I want to make here.
it
First
wasn't
of all,
worse than expectations, I guess, Dwight.
a number of
Yeah.
these people who filed for unemployment are being furloughed, and you know, God willing, they're going to be back at work once everything reopens up. And I don't know what percentage of those people that filed for unemployment were furloughed as opposed to actually laid off, but that's a number to come in factor there. And another way, I think this is exactly what the left wanted, is to be able to start that dialogue of, look at how much unemployment has risen under Trump's reign. Whereas if you're looking at before there was a global pandemic, we've had the lowest unemployment, you know, that we've seen in a long, long time, and the economy was doing great. And I think that they're very much expecting that it'll bounce back. I saw, though, with all this news coming out today, there was a photo of Times Square, and they have a Trump death clock in Times Square, basically counting the number of deaths in the United States due to COVID-19. And it's got a website. It's TrumpDeathClock.com.
You know what that is? That's basically just like what the left did when President Bush 43 was in the White House. ABC News every night. This many servicemen died in
But
Iraq.
what
Afghanistan.
rich liberal with no life spent the amount of money to have a billboard in Times
Yep.
Square with the Trump death clock?
And you know, Jackie, that kind of reaffirms my point about the media and I guess more of our mainstream elites' perspective that if it's a Republican, they're personally responsible for all the deaths that happened under their jurisdiction. Whereas a Democrat, not at all. Why isn't there a Cuomo death clock right under it? When they will realize that most of the things on the Trump death clock are also on the Cuomo death clock. Frankly, at least a plurality.
the crazy old man can spend the money however the hell he wants. But here's
Yeah,
the-
absolutely.
the point
But
is-
the party of love and affection supposedly should be giving that money to help the
Well,
people in the hospitals or
I-
the people who are homeless.
I have
They only
for
want-
the
they only
first.
love each other. They don't love. They hate Republicans. You know?
So I have a homework assignment for Dwight for the next week. Okay.
Oh, good,
Okay.
it's not me.
Oh,
I
dear,
graduated.
And yeah, you're off the hook. We'll let Dwight do this. What we'll do is we'll divide the country into red states and blue states, right? And then we'll tally the number of cases and the number of deaths, and we'll do a comparison against population. So Dwight, will you come back next week with that chart?
With a
Sure.
graphic.
with a graphic?
Yeah, absolutely. I went to. I mean, Marcus and I went to school together. Marcus have seen my
Right?
handiwork, some of my
What do you
reports.
think? What do you think, Marcus? You may basically
yeah.
we know how Dwight operates, right, Ryan?
Yes.
Dwight has an idea, and Dwight's response is, "Oh yeah, that can be done. I can do that." And then, of course, he turns around and assigns it to somebody else to do, right?
I've got people for that.
Look at me, I'm bad at that.
You know, Dwight, you're a really good consultant, because that's the consultant mindset,
Working
right?
for Don Irvine, I was doing all this stuff myself. I did not have people then. Now I've got people. I've got Sparkplug. I've got bats.
Yeah, but let's come back to
I've
so
got
one
Adam.
one of the responses to this, in fairness, will be, oh well, you're not looking Republican, Democrat, or red, blue. What you're looking at is the most densely populated states. Of the states with the cities, with Detroit's and with New York City's, with New York City, they're the ones that are having the most serious problem. And this actually comes back to the issue that Jackie made about, or I think it was Jackie was talking about who wants to go on a mass transit. They're the ones that are really having the hardest time with
Well,
this.
True story. I got pink eye on Metro once, just
Ew.
a couple years ago. I had to go visit my dad's broker after he'd passed away to do some state stuff. And
All right, time to move on. I think.
I think so. Yeah.
Let's talk about the Dems' other response, which came out today, which is a new legislation. They want to give $2,000 per month, backtracking to March, going to 3 months after the pandemic ends and everything goes back to quote-unquote normal, to any person making less than $120,000 per year. That includes people who do not file taxes and who also don't have social security numbers. And speak.
That is
So-
so unfair. I am sorry. Why do we need to give $2,000 to people? These people are not going to go back to work. They'll just sit in. I mean, $2,000 is a lot of
I
money.
didn't know the national debt actually just grew money on trees. I mean,
So let's go
It's
back
come from
to that.
Obama's stash, you know.
So let's go back to the unemployment number. I think Don, you're the one who cited it, right? We heard it.
14.7%.
14%.
Right, 14%. So that's nowhere near the number of all the people under 125,000, right?
Yeah.
So what they're proposing is more people who are working, apparently, or have incomes
Yeah.
or what have you, would be getting this money than actually the people who are unemployed.
As someone who, of course, like, does anyone say no to free money? Absolutely not. But as someone who would qualify for that check, who's still making her full salary right now, it just seems irresponsible to just hand out money that not everybody necessarily needs.
Hey, Jackie, that's a
and worsen the
vacation for
debt.
you.
It
That's a
is,
vacation
you know what?
for you.
You know what? But it's not, it's all getting paid back in the long run. Eventually, we're all paying it back in the long
Absolutely.
run. There's
More
no
More
such
likely
thing
your
as a free
generation,
lunch.
Jackie, than mine.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Or mine. Us Gen Xers. Marcus and I are going to have to be on the
Yep.
hook for this either.
There's no such thing as a free lunch, and I think a lot of Americans really don't get that. All they see is,
That's
oh
our
my
gift
God,
to
the
you,
government's
Ryan.
going to give me $2,000 a month for the next year.
Yeah, I really appreciate the gift of crippling national debt. That will.
Right.
Well, I tell you,
The gift that keeps on giving.
that's basically Nancy Pelosi, and she's eating all that fancy ice cream in her 25,000.
Well, the impetus for this bill is everyone should be able to afford Jenny's ice cream, not just the elites.
By the way, I've had Jenny's ice cream. May I just say, Breyers or Edie's far superior to Jenny's.
Trust me.
Can we give Andrew
double
Yang
crap.
any credit
You
for
can start
kind
the crap,
of with
trust
his
me.
UBI proposal initially that gives impetus to them for this a little bit too?
Oh, absolutely. Every time that this gets brought up, is this a PG-13 show?
It's
We
unusual.
tried. We
It
tried.
gets a little bit hard every time this comes up.
No.
There's no
The-
FTC.
Depending on Dwight, sometimes it fluctuates.
Zero lag
Ryan,
is-
Ryan, get ready with the mute button.
I've got my finger on the trigger. We're ready to go.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't remember. I didn't look deeply into that. Did anybody look to see how much money that proposal would wind up costing and adding to the national debt by any chance?
I don't know. I think it's an unknown because they said, through 3 months after when it ends.
Right.
When it ends is the unknown factor.
It also plays right into for the Democrats because that's one of the Democrat tactics too, is that they really don't want to put a price tag on all of this stuff because then people realize, whoa. I mean, look, remember when the Democrats were, I mean, even during the debates, they were tearing each other apart about, Bernie Sanders' proposals, how many trillions of dollars, all the money that he wanted to spend on health care and all this other stuff. So, they know that, if they put a big number out there, some people will actually, even Democrats, some Democrats will probably choke on that.
And let's be clear. I mean, right now, the unemployment benefit, roughly, depending on the state you're in, is about 50 to 60% of your income, up to about 50,000. So less than that is the amount, plus the federal amount of money. So you have the potential of literally, if you're making less than $60,000, rough numbers, and you're unemployed, you're going to be made whole by the combination of the two benefits.
Yep.
So this is on top of that, even more money being thrown at it. There has been some concern that the fact that you're getting essentially 100+% for a lot of people who are unemployed, that will serve as a disincentive to go back to work. That said, the way the rules work, if you're recalled to work and you refuse work, you will lose your state unemployment. Now, if your employer isn't in business anymore, then you're going to continue to get the benefit for a period of time and have a disincentive to, frankly, look for work if the job you would get would be making less than you were getting from the benefit. So right now, I mean, they have a more focused program than what the Democrats are proposing.
Yeah, I mean, but this whole proposal, I mean, is it solving a problem or is it trying to buy a constituency and votes down there?
Well, I think it's
buying
it's-
votes. It's
It,
buying
I think
votes.
actually it's a one-upmanship with Trump, which is, if you do X, I'll raise you 2, and they'll go back and forth.
And they're going to turn around and use it against him. Look how much Trump, raised
Raised
the
the debt.
national debt.
Right.
I mean, you already see the phony
where does this
Lincoln
end?
Project ads, that they're running on Fox News and so on. The phony Lincoln Project ads, criticizing President Trump. You'd think, if you watch that course, you'd think it was President Trump that went around and infected everybody personally with COVID-19.
Well, did you see? I saw on Twitter today. I think it was our friend Matt Foley who tweeted it out that the Lincoln Project was complaining to Facebook executives that one of their videos got marked as fake news by the Facebook fake news filter, and his caption was, "Libs complain that rules they insist Facebook imposes actually apply to them also," or something like
How
that.
dare they?
Yeah.
It's
Oh, there
just-
they. All right. Let's talk about Bridgegate and SCOTUS. This is something that Dwight, I think he loved this decision. I know decision, right, Jackie?
Yes.
Oh yeah, the
Figure out-
local
figure out those
Jersey
convictions.
girl weighing in here.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, a unanimous decision, something that we very rarely, if ever, see in the Supreme Court these days. That has to count for something, right?
Yeah.
People on the left.
And I've said it all along. My friend Bill Baroni would never do anything wrong, and I was right, and everyone else was wrong. That base on the left, I should say. But
It's amazing, though. I mean, this started in 2013, right?
yeah,
Oh yeah. I was still New Jersey resident then.
and this is. I mean, first of all, I think it shows that the system does work sometimes in our favor. Usually the decks are stacked against us. Because everybody plays the poor. They wheel out the dying old person or the child that's going to sleep hungry, which you sometimes they make that up because I've been told they made that up. But this is great. I mean, the fact that it shows that one, Governor Christie did nothing wrong. Bill Baroni did nothing wrong. The state of New Jersey Department of Transportation did nothing wrong. Now, where do those people who lost their jobs as a result of the witch hunt that the media put on these people who are working for the Port Authority, who are working for the New Jersey Transportation Authority, the bridge authorities, where do they go to get their reputation back? Which office do they go in to get their reputation back? Or the back pays, the loss? It must be next to impossible to find a job once you're like vilified in the media.
Even
like
now, did you go to work and be like, yeah, but look, did you see what happened on the news today? I'm free and clear, and then,
Yeah.
sorry, tarnished reputation. And not to bring it back to sexual assault, it's the same thing there. If someone goes out and falsely accuses someone of sexual assault, their life gets ruined, and that's irreparable damage, even if it comes out later that it was complete BS in the first place.
Well, I won't jump ahead, Don, but there's somebody else who's looking to get his reputation back, right? Michael Flynn.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Michael Flynn.
Yes, I mean that was an amazing thing. I mean, the liberals once again, you know where we're going with these things when you look at the liberal Democrat reaction to this, right? So the Department of Justice dropping the charges against Michael Flynn, but once again, yeah, as you said, needs to get his reputation back somehow, some way. But the liberals are going absolutely crazy about this. What's the deal with Flynn? How do you feel, guys?
I think he has been so wronged. And speaking of people who have had irreparable harm done to him, he's got to get
he sues and gets a lot of money.
He better get a cushy job at some sort of right-wing organization as an exchange for this to help him recover.
No, we bring him back into the administration.
Or that. I mean, I think he would be a great associate director of Judicial Watch and working with Tom Fitton on exposing all the government BS and the Department of Justice nonsense of Hillary after going after a legitimate person when or someone who legitimately did something wrong when it didn't have anything done to them, where someone who did nothing wrong and had everything done to them. Speak of someone who knows the process. I'll throw that idea out there.
That's an interesting idea.
Yeah.
But what's particularly interesting is the disclosures about the extent to which President Obama was familiar with the details of basically this effort to use the surveillance of Flynn to find out what was going on with the Trump campaign, as though it was this notion that somehow there was a Logan Act, a crime on the part of the incoming president to be meeting with officials from another government. Not that they were making policy at that point, but that they were having some kind of engagement. It really is breathtaking how much this has been turned around. This meets I've got another thing for Dwight. I have, and actually Don, you all appreciate, I have my NPR index. Now, I don't usually like listening to NPR because I don't know, their breathless, hushed tones is just a
They
little.
speak so softly, like Diane.
It really is just painfully pretentious. But I will say, my index is when things are really going well for the conservatives, for Republicans. That's when I really want to turn on NPR because I just want, as opposed to, but yes. I just want to watch them, listen to them squirm. And this week with these two court cases or these two court results, judicial results, this triggers my NPR index.
NPR, MSNBC, I like watching Rachel
same thing,
Maddow.
yes.
I like watching Rachel Maddow be uncomfortable.
And you know what's funny is now their talking point is all this shows is how corrupt Attorney General Barr is for dropping. It's like this is said by the guy who made up stuff about impeachment, who distracted the president when he could have been focused on COVID-19, keeping an eye on the Chi-Coms.
Are we talking about John Brennan?
I thought we were talking about Shifty Schiff.
Shifty Schiff. Okay, yeah. Yes.
Impeachment, come on. And by the way, speaking of Brennan, I hope he's sued by Flynn. I really hope all these people get sued and they lose their livelihoods. I hope they have to mortgage their homes. I hope they have to sell their homes to pay it off.
Dwight, we're going to be going into the Stained Glass Pub when this lockdown is lifted, and John Brennan's going to be serving our pizza.
Just on this Flynn thing, though, I mean, what about the liberal argument on this? But he pleaded guilty. I mean, he admitted to lying. You know,
There's this word, it's a really good
They
definition
did
for
okay.
coercion.
Coercion. Yes, thank you. And
Today's
they
show is
basically
brought
said,
to you
"We'll
by
go off. We'll get your
coercion.
son if you don't do this." And you know what? He's doing what any good dad would do. You know. And frankly, you know, that's why I hope every one of them has to mortgage their house. They lose their house. They lose their families. Quite frankly, what these people do is despicable to Flynn. And it is time they get their comeuppance. And you know something? We're in charge now. I hate to put it that way, but we're in charge. And now justice will reign supreme.
Well, how about this one? We're on a good streak going here. Can Roger Stone be next? Can there be justice for Roger Stone? Maybe.
Mark,
Will there be justice for Spiro
I'm
Agnew?
not sure. Forgive me, but I don't. Justice for Roger Stone may not be in Roger Stone's interest.
Yeah.
what I thought was interesting about Roger Stone is that his wife, you know, his ex-wife Ann Stone, you know, doesn't want him, you know, to get the harsh treatment and everything like that. I mean, she's
Right.
posting on Facebook to support him and everything like that. And she says, you know, I was married to him. He's like, you know, before. I mean, consider that, you know, I'm the ex-wife.
Right.
I'm saying this, and she says that carries a lot. That should carry a lot more weight. Because I remember, as I recall, when they broke up, that was a pretty nasty battle.
Yes, it was.
Pretty bitter divorce.
Yes.
So, you know, and Dwight, you just meant, you know, we just kind of got into a little bit of shifty shift there and everything like
Yeah.
that. All these documents are being released about all the hearings, all the things that they were going on there. You know, what are they showing here? Is that did Shifty Schiff provide to be true to his name there in terms of the Russia collusion and all that stuff? Looking and looking and looking in desperation and not finding anything?
Yeah, I think so. And here's the thing: I think Adam Schiff. I got more colorful words for him, but by
PG-13, Dwight.
Ryan.
I've got the mute button.
my lovely niece Nikita
that button?
O'Neill is watching, so I'm not gonna say anything. You know, so hi Nikita. Anyways, but as I was saying, Adam Schiff should lose his job, but he's not going to because he's got such a lefty district. You know, they will re-elect him and we'll be stuck with him. We just need people to vote, take back Orange County for the Republicans, and that's how we take back the House in 2020. You know,
Yeah, I agree that you know the most effective way for him to lose his job, insofar as his position as heading that committee, is to flip the Congress.
Yeah.
and I think we can do it. I think we've got some really good candidates. I know a lot of people say, you know, with the announced retirements of that congressman from the what's his name? We went to the dinner. He spoke at Bruce Willis County.
Louis Gohmert.
No, not Louis Gohmert. The guy from the Austin area.
Oh, Will Hurd?
Will Hurd. Yeah.
Actually, from the border, not Austin. Yeah.
Oh, I think it was Austin. No, he's not.
Yeah, no,
Big state, Texas.
it is. For all I know, it's 1,000 miles away from Austin, and it's just, you know, one district away, right?
All right, so Dwight, you are always our Mr. Optimist, you know,
Yes.
on the show. They're by far away. The thing is that, and I've been saying this for weeks, and people can agree or disagree, is just that, you know, we've got this very unusual situation with this campaign this year, right? And so candidates have a hard time raising money. If you're an incumbent, you're probably going to be okay for the most part because you've got the power of the incumbency. You don't really, you can raise some money, but you're not pressured as much. The person that's opposing you, you know, your opponent, they're stuck, you know, in this Zoom world or whatever. They can't get out there. They can't raise money. They can't get their point across to the broad sector that they need to get out there for. I think, you know, right now, I have a hard time seeing for Congress of how it switches much. That it's kind of going to be a little bit in either direction. But you know, unless this campaigns get going pretty fast, I don't see how some of the Democrats, even in the Trump won districts, will lose this year.
I think there's a lot of the same way that people are hoping for a V-shaped recovery with the economy, which I think is less and less likely to happen. There's going to be a V-shaped recovery with terms of campaign activity. I think everyone I know that's very involved is ready the minute they're allowed to, or the minute it's socially acceptable to get back out there and knock on doors. I'm sure, I don't want to speak for Dwight here, but I'm sure he'd be willing to take a pledge that he'll knock on as many doors in this cycle as he has in the last.
People that can do that for me. So.
Why the YRs alone have been making thousands
Yes.
and thousands of phone calls every
Yes.
weekend.
And
But
here's
let me pose a question, and I don't candidly have the answer to it. I wish I did. which is so right now we're kind of focused on when we're going to open, are we bending the curve, and what have you. It's worth keeping in mind just how quickly things have changed this year, thinking where things were, say, the beginning of March compared to basically 2 months later. I'd be curious if we do reach a point where there may be a big gap between those people who want to continue to protect it and be shelter in place and what have you. But a real change may take place of tell me which leaders, which candidate for president, which candidates for Congress are going to be the most adept at turning around the economy and have a plan for going forward. And we right now that's not what is the dominant issue right now. It's do we open or not? How do we deal with the disease? But I could see things changing in a very mercurial way as to what the dominant ask is on the part of the electorate, and which candidate is best able to address that.
I think that's a really good point, Mark.
Jobs, healthcare, everything that we're seeing now is going to be, all the things that we're lacking in at this moment are going to be what they're going to be asking for if the elected.
And by October and November, we'll be in phase 2, if not phase 3 of
Phase 4, maybe.
of a national recovery. Well, there's only 3 phases of a national recovery plan. And Dave Bossie brought up a similar point on Trump Thursday yesterday when he said that even in a down polling period for Trump is overwhelmingly preferred by voters when asked who they think is a better steward of the economy. So I think
they said it's 42% to 35%.
If we're in that mindset, it plays very favorably for Trump. But we have to be there in terms of where people are thinking.
Barack Obama, we're not going to hand the keys over to the people that drove this economy into the ditch and say, oh, here, take the keys after we got it out, so you can drive it back into the ditch. That's just not going to happen.
But I think it's important to be looking forward, and this may play to Trump's advantages, because if anybody's able to turn on a dime, it's Donald Trump, and if anybody is able to stumble over his own shoelaces, it's Joe Biden.
Well, Joe Biden is going to do a Zoom rally from an undisclosed location, but it's for Florida people, and it's he's going to be doing a rally, and I'm willing to bet if President Trump did a Zoom rally, he would max out the bandwidth and just charge everyone $10 to get into the rally. He'd have several thousand people that will be on the Zoom rally, and there'll be people waiting on the outside trying to get into the Zoom conference with the president. Joe Biden will get maybe 100 people. We might even have more viewers than Joe Biden will have for his little Zoom rally.
You know what? And rallies aside, I'm really looking forward to.
We're already getting more viewers than MSNBC.
I'm looking forward to when debates actually do take place between the two. When Joe Biden can't hide in the basement with his wife feeding him answers and with cue cards and prompts, and actually seeing, what can he actually do with his own brain that may or may not still be 100% there.
You guys are too old to remember, but do you think we'll see an Admiral Stockdale moment with Joe Biden standing at the podium?
I agree with Marcus. I don't think he'll be on the debate stage because he's not going to be the nominee.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I still don't feel like it. It's going to be a lot. I mean, to some degree, yes. I mean, you could see just how you can see now just how the performance would be if he were on a stage with Trump. But if you look at it, I mean, they have to know this, and I think more and more Democrats are sort of realizing. Yeah, we got to replace Biden. I think it wasn't there like a poll recently that's like
there was
over 25%.
Democrats, about 26% of Democrats, so they like to have another nominee. They watched his response to terror.
Thank you.
And 61% said that they thought he was still credible and all this. But we don't really know how much the terror is.
Don.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Don, in that any argument they were going to make against Trump's character, which was going to be a big campaign point, they've completely nullified now.
By the way, if the Democrats were to steal the domination away from Joe Biden after they stole it from Bernie to give it to Joe, it is going to disenfranchise and dishearten all the hardcore, Biden supporters that were with him.
I don't think there are any.
The DNC has no credibility.
So here's
I actually know 3 of them.
Yeah, but so here's the scenario, which I guess is I think, I mean, I understand what Marcus and Ryan are saying, but it sort of depends on having I love this phrase, an Al Franken moment, where if you recall, Al Franken just frankly folded and resigned from the Senate in face of the accusations that had been made against him. And I
Look
think
who has that seat now. It's not like it's funny.
Right.
But Mark makes a good point, although I don't see Biden giving him that easily. He's trying to raise all this hype about who's going to be my VP pick, you know, and he posted, I think, in his most recent post, the pictures were of Stacey Abrams, Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris.
He's innocent unless if he doesn't pick Stacey Abrams.
Well, but here's the thing. But if you look, I mean, there's another graphic that was posted that had, you know, a picture of Tara Reid and a picture of Blasey Ford, and it said, you know, with the one that had all the boxes checked and one that had none of the boxes checked, do you remember what happened? Do you remember where it happened? Do you remember, you know, do you have friends who can corroborate your story that you've told? And Tara Reid had every single one of those boxes checked off, and Blasey Ford had none.
By the way, and here's the other thing is I think with problem with Joe Biden is one, the way these people, I don't know if you've seen some of what the lefties are saying, you know, I don't give a damn. Joe Biden could rape 5 women and we would still vote for him because they said he is better than. No, who said it? Did you not see that article?
No.
I saw it. I saw it on.
It was in the Montgomery Chronicle.
Did those people ask to remain anonymous?
But no, my point is, this was a. And then there was the Washington Post article the other day by the former Politico founder. Or he is the political founder, who wrote, because anybody is better than
Trump.
He could be, Joe Biden could be guilty of everything and we'd still vote for him because he's better than Trump.
Well, that one was interesting, Dwight, because the guy was a former New York Times reporter for many years. He also apparently co-founded Politico and The Hill.
Oh, The Hill, too.
He was very upset with the New York Times call last week, the editorial board saying that they thought there ought to be an investigation. Never mind the fact that the investigation that the New York Times editorial board called for said, we want the DNC to put together an unbiased, apolitical panel.
I think Adam Schiff is going to chair that committee too. Chaired by Adam Schiff, you know, and Nancy Pelosi.
But in that letter that you're alluding to, you know, that got some attention was he says, you know, I want a coronation of Joe Biden.
Yes.
He didn't really care about anything. I want a coronation. Got to get Trump out. That is the attitude of a lot of Democrats.
You know, I think that if Joe Biden wants to really show with his VP pick that he's outreaching to women and really trying to get past this, I think he should choose Mike Bloomberg to really help him reach towards the middle of the country.
See, now there's another point here. There's another story that came up relating to Bloomberg, you know, Ryan, which is just the... you know, Bloomberg gave all that money to the DNC, right?
Yeah.
And apparently the DNC is pressuring state party organizations to hire the former Bloomberg staffers that were promised to be kept on the Bloomberg.
Yeah, that's a really bad thing, by the way, because he promised all those people, he said, even if I lose the primary, or really when I lose the primary, frankly, that's probably not what he said. Even if I lose the primary, I'm going to keep you on, which is very unconventional, but if anyone's going to do it, it's the person with basically unlimited money. And then he did the exact opposite and did what a normal campaign would do and laid off all the staff. But when you're told you're going to have a job through November no matter what, and then that's just totally... A lot of these people are qualified Democratic staffers who would have worked for candidates who, frankly, had a chance if they were not given that promise of, if you work for us, you're going to eat $90 sushi every night on the campaign trail and work through November.
I'd work for Bloomberg if I could have $90 sushi every night.
Yeah.
I mean, geez.
Yeah, my wife can make California rolls a lot cheaper than that.
Jackie, we know your price now politically, right?
I can be bought with sushi. That's my weakness.
Well, what I thought was interesting about that story, though, Ryan, too, was just that the state parties, these Democratic state party organizations, they're unhappy, you know, that the DNC is pressuring them. They're saying, like, you know, and that the DNC is trying to clean up Michael Bloomberg's mess.
Yeah. I think, you know, Michael Bloomberg, they hate him so much now in the Democratic Party, he might try to come flocking back to his original home of the Republican Party. But frankly, I don't know if we want him.
Will he open him with open arms?
If he gives... Well, Jackie will open up her arms for $90 sushi,
For
right?
sushi.
Yes.
I know this sounds like I want a sugar daddy. I really don't. I just need to get that out there.
one more question on Tara Reid before we move on here, which is just that she came out, I guess it was in the Megyn Kelly interview, and said, she'd be willing to take a lie detector test if Joe Biden would.
Yep.
I mean, that's not going to happen, right, on the Biden side?
No.
Right.
How do you give a lie detector test to someone with dementia?
Does the Biden?
No, I mean that 100% seriously. It doesn't
It's
work.
going to be Dwight's line.
Hey, Ryan.
Do we
No,
need
Dwight's line is
Biden?
OLD stage 12.
Do we need Biden to take a lie detector test to corroborate her story if she does take a lie detector test, and it comes up as she's telling
No.
the absolute
Yeah.
truth? You
Absolutely.
don't need his side, and polygraph tests are based off of the way your body reacts, right? Like if his brain doesn't remember it happening, even if it did, I mean, it would probably show up as false anyway.
Yeah, and by the way, I think the bigger story there is that no mainstream outlet would interview her except for Fox, but she didn't want to be labeled as a right-wing shill, so she had to go to Megyn Kelly, who really isn't doing anything after she made the mistake of leaving Fox, thinking that the mainstream media would accept her as a former Fox host, which was clearly wrong. But anyways,
By the way, real quick question: has anybody seen Gloria Allbright do an interview with this woman, saying how I believe this woman, like she did with Blasey Ford?
yes.
That's an
That's
interesting
one of
question.
the-
Gloria Allbright
the
offered to defend this woman.
hypocrisy of a lot of the feminists is that they're not talking about
Yeah.
this, right?
Like Alyssa Milano.
I mean,
There
Gloria,
were 2 articles by CNN on Tara Reid, only 2.
and
And
they're
there
all
were like
about- she's
400,
a-
I think it was 437 about Blasey Ford.
And you know what the left, let's get
Unbelievable.
down to it. You know what the left feels about when you have a woman accusing a Democrat? I believe it was the beady-eyed freak himself. I'm trying to think of his name, James Carville, who put it best. You take. He's a really nice guy, though. We met him in
He is
2012.
a nice guy.
He's
Yes.
a really nice
He
guy,
just
though.
has beady eyes. There's nothing wrong with that.
My point is, we remember turning to Bill Clinton bimbo eruption. He goes, "Well, you drag a $20 to a trailer park," and that's what, when he was referring to Paula Jones, and that is the mentality of the left. When somebody accuses somebody of the right, they're always from the country club set, and it's okay. I think there's a soft.
Dwight, I think you're onto something, is that clearly America believes Bill Clinton. I think we should get Bill Clinton to come up and vouch for Joe Biden's high level of character and respect for women.
I don't think Harvey Weinstein's doing anything right now. He might give a good word.
Yeah.
Let me squeeze in one final thing, and one of our favorite people, it's Michelle Obama. So she has a Netflix documentary, which I have not seen yet, and I'm not sure exactly I'm ever going to see it.
Already yet?
Yeah. But she was quoted, somebody picked this up in the media, talking about, she said, having children was a concession that cost her aspirations and dreams. Because, part of this was that she
Wow.
having to stand behind Barack. She thought she was going to have this career and work with Barack and doing all these things. What does that say about her kids, motherhood, this whole thing? I mean, what the
I
heck?
bet the feminists cheered when she said that.
Sasha,
Like, how
Michelle,
dare women be
you know.
locked in a box where they have to be
Yes.
parents?
Sasha, Michelle, sorry, mommy doesn't love you. You were just a sacrifice for mommy had to make for daddy's political career.
Yeah, I mean, if you have the kids and you see that, what are you thinking?
Yeah.
No wonder the kids started acting up so much when they got to Harvard.
I tell you, the kids should just go ahead and become Republicans and vote for Donald Trump. So that'd be true.
I don't think that's happening.
I mean, crazier things have happened.
Rebellion.
His half brother supports Trump.
Look at the Reagan kids.
This is a true thing, by the way. I thought it was fake when I first saw it. The president admitted this guy was his brother. It's his half brother that lives in Kenya.
In a hut. Without a sign, it's a hut, sweet hut.
I don't know about that part, but his Twitter profile picture is a "Make America Great Again" hat. They haven't spoken to each other since Barack's wedding, but he supports Trump. I think he just wants attention. I think he just.
Jackie,
Actually,
It's a long time.
Barack and Michelle Obama got married on the same day as my parents.
all right.
Wow.
Hey, Jackie, you want to take it away and do the wrap up?
Yes. Well, I'll do my closing thoughts first because they kind of tie into the same thing as terribly awful quotes. And mine is a horrible quote from the New York Times. It's incredibly anti-Semitic. It says, "The Israeli Defense Ministry's research and development arm is best known for pioneering cutting-edge ways to kill people and blow things up. Now it's turning to saving lives because, as we know, Israel's a front runner in science and technology. They've made leaps and strides in terms of treatment for COVID-19 and have never been about just going around killing people. In fact, they have an amazing defense force because they have to, because everybody else wants to kill Israel.
Right.
Yeah.
So, New York Times, anti-Semitic. Today, I would go with yes. And that's my closing thought.
All right, Marcus.
That Biden might pull out something with the VP pick, and I think they're trying to salvage the campaign with the VP pick. But I still don't see him being the one on the ballot in the general, and I'm frankly more concerned about who they might replace him with than
Andrew
his chances as a
Cuomo.
candidate.
I don't think it's going to be Andrew Cuomo.
Final thoughts, Dwight.
Yes, VPs don't make difference. Bob Dole had one of the best VP choices in recent history with the legend, the myth, Jack Kemp, and that didn't help him at all because, he's Bob Dole. Bob Dole was happy to be running for president. Bob Dole.
It was Bob Dole's turn.
It was Bob Dole's turn.
Yeah.
But my final thoughts are, Bob Dole, I was actually watching it. It's really impressive. I was very impressed with the speech given by Gerald Ford in 1976. It was
Ryan, get ready.
He's muted. There we go. You're back.
Mark, you like, I'm sure you were a Jerry Ford guy.
Get ready.
Yes.
You like Jerry Ford.
Yeah.
But as I was saying, Jerry Ford gave a speech back, and one of the best things he did was turn down New York for their bailout. When New York City wanted a bailout from the federal government, and New York Times had that infamous headline, President Ford tells New York City
It wasn't the New York Times, it was the Daily News.
Daily
but,
News? Okay, Daily
yeah.
News, New York Times,
Big difference.
Dwight's
We're just
closing rant.
little last to another.
All right.
But that's one praise I have for President
Yes.
Jerry Ford.
End part 1 of Dwight's truly.
Your final thoughts, Mark.
Oh, okay. I'm looking forward over the next week to the Republican convention for the state of Maryland, which will be a virtual convention. So it'll be on, actually not Zoom, but will be opening up. I think it's an example of we are collectively as a society kind of using technology that's been around for a while, that was certainly available, but are using it in very positive, creative ways, and allowing us to interact just the way we're interacting on this show.
Well, here's to hoping we don't get Zoom bombed or whatever the equivalent is on the platform we're using by.
No, the platform's pretty secure that we're using.
Right.
Okay, Mark stole my closing thought, and I will say the platform is very secure, and it's so secure, in fact, that one of the requirements set out by Dirk Hare when choosing a platform was that Dwight be muted by default. Which is the case.
Great closing thought.
Which is the case for the webinar. So please go online on the Maryland GOP website. You can sign up for the hospitality suite tomorrow and vote in a straw poll for who you want to be our gubernatorial nominee in 2022 and our presidential nominee in 2024. And Dwight will not be saying anything because he will be muted. Okay, thank you, everyone.
All right,
Yes.
Marcus and Don, you guys have closing thoughts?
Marcus has already had mine. Are just this.
I'll add this.
What is that?
We have.
Sushi.
I get that right.
Oh,
And a ballot. There you go.
okay.
All right, my final thoughts are just that this Sunday's Mother's Day, right?
Oh,
So
yes.
don't forget mothers, our mothers, for those of us that are married, our wives and things like that. If we've got, married children who are mothers, wives and mothers, those as well. So, a big shout out to mothers and wives, women. I don't know where I'd be without my wife, and I was very grateful, obviously, for my own mother, for all the time that I was able to spend with her. So, don't forget to honor your mother.
Don, I've set up my own Zoom conference with my mother and with my kids, and we're going to have a big confab. So, yes.
As
I
are
call
we.
my mom 7 times a day anyway, and I think she's good.
All right, who's going to close it?
Bye, everybody.
Okay.
Happy Friday.
Yes, Jackie, I'll call 8 times for Mother's Day, right?
Yeah, an extra time.